So I'm Jane Tingley, and I guess originally I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, but currently I'm living in Toronto. I think as an artist, I'm really interested in how people experience artworks, how people experience the world. And I think that what I'm trying to do with my artworks is to sort of probe that experience and to provide new experiences, to think about the body that experiences those artworks, that body that has memories, that has sensory perceptions, and how those trigger memories. I'm really interested in how people move through the world and how the past is constantly there and you're constantly remembering things. And so I try to create artworks that speak to that type of person, and artworks that try to make meaning through metaphor or poetry, or taking different juxtapositions and putting them together and trying to create environments that are emotive and sensuous and that people can respond to, rather than making something that is sort of harder to intellectually grasp. Like, there's certainly an intellectual component to what I'm doing, but I'm really interested in how people experience the piece in and of itself, and I think that's one of my biggest motivators. So the artwork that I created is really interested in human, non-human engagement. And one of the things that happens with human and non-human, so if it's something that's like a cat or a dog, they move at the same speed as we do. But in this particular case, I'm interested in plant sort of intelligence or sentience. And plants and trees move at such a slow pace. And so I use the technology to sense the plant body and to gather information about that plant, and then, or the tree in this case, or a forest. And I use the technology to help people sort of gain entry points, because often what's happening in the world is the world is unfolding around us in so many different ways, through vibration, through chemicals, through scent, through all these different phenomenon that maybe we're not able to see. And technology allows me to sense that phenomenon, and then I can materialize it within the gallery. So I feel as though the technology plays a crucial role at mediating that space, that difference between sort of the human body and the non-human body. This piece has been in process since about 2019, I think. I really started focusing on this. The process has been iterative in general. So I often will have this grandiose idea, and then I'll build it, and it'll fail in many different ways. And then I will look at it again and figure out what failed, and then rebuild it, and so on and so forth. So this piece started off with this great idea that I was going to build a sensing network, and I was going to sense forests, and then I was going to harvest that data, and then I was going to materialize artworks with that data. And then you only have to build electronics once and put them outside once when it rains to realize how hard it is to create sensing pods that actually can withstand nature. And so then I slowly, iteratively built these pods over and over again. And they started off being this very big central system that had a big sensing hub with all these small sensors connected to it. And then slowly I realized that wasn't effective, and then I redesigned it, and so now they're all distributed and they have no wires connected to them, and it's a lot more, it's tighter. And so slowly over the last 3 years I've been building this piece, and then the visualization part, it's something that's come out of my research in general. And I don't know if you want me to go into the visualization at this point, or should I talk about the visualization more specifically in a different? So in terms of the visualization, that was inspired by a number of different things. But specifically, I'm working on a partnership grant, which is being run out of the University of Waterloo by Dr. Stephen Bednarski, and it's housed at the Herstmonceux Castle in East Sussex, UK. And in that partnership grant, it's called Environments of Change, we're it's a very interdisciplinary grant, and I'm particularly interested in the dendrochronology studies. And dendrochronology is, you can also have dendroclimatology, climate studies, where you're actually looking at the rings in a tree. Like when you cut down a tree, you see the rings moving inwards. That's how one dates a tree, right? So the outer ring is the more contemporary rings, and the inner ring are the older. And so you can actually use studies, and you can study each of the rings, and you can tell climate data from each of those tree rings. So whether or not, if the tree's old enough, whether or not there was a drought in 1892, for example. So you can get that type of information. So I wanted to create a visualization for them at Hearst-Monceau Castle. But then as I was preparing this artwork, I started to think about just the tree ring as that metaphor. And so then the visualization, which I initially was just sort of trying to create a particulate field that was flowing, and you could see all these aspects of a tree. And then I started to think about the visualization as a way of visualizing the hourly experience of a tree. So each of those rings, if you see the visualization, the very big one, you can see that there's these rings that move forward. And if you go onto the interface, you can actually move it sideways, and you can see all 24 hours of the tree's experience. And so what I've done is I've treated each ring like it's sort of a memory bank of the tree's experience from that hour. And so eventually, when I work at Hearst-Monceau, I might actually translate each of those rings to a year of a tree's life. But for the purposes of this exhibition, I thought it would be interesting to have each of these rings being an hour, and they move forward. So you've got 24 rings moving inwards, and that holds the information of a tree. And one of the things that is, when we think about nature, and we always try to, like when it comes to trees, there's this idea that trees are inert, but the fact is they're moving really, really slowly. And you can see it when they have stop motions, where you can see like a bean sprout, and you can see the thing moving around really fast. Trees are doing that too. There's so much liveliness. It's just that they're moving at a different pace. And so how do humans, who move at a very, very fast pace with our heartbeats that are moving quite quickly, understand the complexity and the liveliness of a tree, a complex organism that is subterranean, it's above ground, it's growing in every direction all at once. And so as a way of sort of addressing that problem, I'm remembering the tree's experience for 24 hours. And then with the interface, I'm getting people to hold as still as they possibly can. So I'm slowing down the human, and I'm speeding up the tree, so that hopefully the tree and the human meet somewhere in between. I mean, that's the central question. That's the central thesis for me. How do we reorient how people look at nature when we live in a world that starts with the assumption that nature is a commodity for exploitation? So how can we possibly, it's a part of everything we do. It's a part of every part of our lives. You look at your car, from the paper that you're writing on to the diapers that you throw away. There's all these things that are refined from the world around us. And so there's a general sort of belief that nature is here for our exploitation. But that is a very specific to a Western capitalistic framework. It's not something that, say, for example, exists in indigenous cultures who have a very different set of cosmology, like a different cosmology that looks at nature as something that has spirit, or has a liveliness, or it has this sort of embedded intelligence. And so it's really a matter of perspective. And so that really comes from how we internalize the world that we grew up in, the world that socialized us. And so in my mind, media artworks have a lot of power, or artworks in general, but media artworks, I'm just speaking about that because this is what's in the show. They have this power to provide embodied experiences, and that embodied, we tend to believe what we see, we tend to believe what we feel. It's hard to have empathy until you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So I feel as though there's a tremendous capacity for new media artworks to create empathy. And in my mind, if we can start highlighting the natural world as individuals, trees as individuals, we start to create this context where we're being forced to actually consider that this thing is alive, this thing is, does have will, it does have intelligence, it's just not like our intelligence. So it's not human-centric, it's not even about us. And you know, as humans, we're so used to everything being about us because all our stories are about us. And so the artworks in this show are telling stories about telling other people's stories, other individual stories that aren't human necessarily, in a hope that people can start to develop maybe more empathy and therefore develop more of an understanding that it's not just, I've got to do the right thing. It's like once you recognize that something's alive, once you recognize that something has autonomy and intelligence, then the ethical implications of that are pretty profound. And so it's really about asking people to think through that space. And once you truly understand that nature isn't just a commodity, it isn't just something that's lifeless that we can exploit, that it's actually something that's complex and it's multifaceted and it's diverse and it needs diversity and it needs to be protected. And so I think about, you know, what's happening in New Zealand. I think it happened, I want to say Argentina, but I know that I'm wrong. It's happened in Quebec, where the government has recognized legal personhood of bodies of waters and forests. And I think that that's a really great way of addressing the absolute necessity of recognizing these individuals. They're not human individuals, they're non-human individuals, but we need to start protecting the rights of those individuals. So I do believe it plays a role in creating the framework for something from that hard work to start from. So what I'm interested in, and as the overarching metaphor for everything that I'm doing right now, is the idea of how do we create the context for a mutualistic relationship to evolve between humans and nature. And so one of the longest, most well-known mutualistic relationships is the relationship between a termite and the protozoa that's in its stomach. I don't know if you know this, I didn't know this, that termites are actually incapable of eating or digesting wood. It's actually the protozoa that's in its stomach that breaks the cellulose down that the termite can then eat and absorb. So the termite has to be inoculated with a protozoa at birth, otherwise it won't survive. And so it's one of the most ancient mutualistic relationships that we know of, and it's between the termite and the protozoa. And so for me, it's that protozoa that became the template for all the pods that I created. And so all my pods use that protozoa shape. And there's a variety of different types of shapes, but it all started from there. And in fact, everything I've done is sort of, I always go back to this one relationship and I do a little bit more research until I find the answer in that relationship before I make any aesthetic decisions in the artwork.